And hello, welcome to Project 180. My name's Kevin McGowan. Today I'm going to be speaking with John Connolly. Hi, John.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, man. Really happy to have you here with us today. And we're going to be talking about obviously some project management stuff. I'm wondering if we could start off, John. You could just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're located too.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Really pleased to be here. And I'm a project manager, project management consultant, trainer. I've been managing projects for about a decade now. I spent 16 years in the library field. I was a librarian. I have my master's degree in library and information studies. That's something that I've kind of carried with me forward into project management as I formally kind of moved into that area. Worked in a lot of different areas, local government, nonprofits. I worked for a couple of different software companies, subcontractor, federal government. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, so kind of tapped into that market right now. Planning
Excellent.
to keep me busy, planning to keep me busy all the time. And I'm really occupied with right now looking into ways to help move the project management field forward, particularly using my background as an information professional. That's really kind of my area of expertise, that kind of like pivoting between how we manage our data and how we manage our projects and how we leverage our learning in order to make our projects more effective in the future. So like that's all very interesting to me. And then I'm active on LinkedIn and always just trying to grow my community and meet people where they are. I talk to a lot of people with a lot of experience in project management, as well as a lot of people just moving into the field. And I think there are a lot of people very interested in project management at this point in time.
I agree, and I'm grateful to have you today on the show. It's really nice to have you, and I'm curious about your perspectives on a lot of things. Um, when we were prepping for this, I was like, okay, I'm trying to imagine the pivot from library science to project management, because everybody seemingly who's a project manager comes at it from a very different background. Like I
Yeah.
started my career as a technical writer. Like I was a trained writer slash journalist slash everything back in my younger days. But that pivoted, and now I've ended up in the project management space as well. Yours in particular seems like a very natural, not necessarily an expected pivot, but a really natural one to go from that library because it's all about organizations, about like you're saying, knowledge and information management.
Yeah.
Explain to me a bit about why you made that decision to jump, or was it something that just kind of naturally evolved?
It was a gradual progression of realization that I was already doing project management. And I think most people start there, right? Most people, they don't say, I'm going to go be a project manager, and then they start a project management career. Most people get started when their boss comes to them and says, hey, I've got something for you to do. Go make this happen. And then they make it happen. And then the boss says, great work. Here's another one, right? We don't volunteer for projects. Usually we get voluntold for projects. And that's a very, very common narrative I found from people getting into formal project management, right? After a while, you suddenly find out that, oh, there's this like whole certification structure and support and tools and formats and templates and all these different things out there. And so you start looking more and more into it. I started to look into getting my PMP back in 2020. And then the pandemic happened, so I put it off, right? But I'd been managing projects for a long, long while. Something that helped me come to a better like clarity about it was a book called Project Management in Libraries by Carly Searcy. And she I had her on one of my live shows on LinkedIn. Actually, it's a really great conversation. um,
Okay.
and it just kind of outlines librarians are doing projects all the time. They're doing events, they're doing programs, they're cataloging information. There's like it's surrounded by projects, and they don't use any of the language of that of project management. They're generally unaware of the tools of project management. And when I finally started knuckling down and studying for my PMP, it was a revelation for me, not just the compatibility with the things I had already been doing, but there were lots of things that could have been helping me do the projects that I had been doing. So what I found over time is there's a mutual reinforcement that can occur between these two fields, right? Information management can learn a lot from project management, but project management as well, they're hurting for what information management can offer.
And that's really interesting to me as well, because one of the things I know, well, we talked about this before, but the whole concept of the lessons learned, like the project postmortem stuff that you
Yeah,
do, right?
yeah,
Like in the textbooks, you need to have your project and you work through it, then you do your lessons learned and you do your analysis, and kind of that should feed into some database. So I'll just call it random database or something like
yeah,
that. Some forum somewhere to
yeah,
document what went right, what went wrong, and how to improve next time.
yeah,
But that's a struggle for a lot of project teams to really do that. But that's
yeah.
like that's a strength, and that's something you're actually very interested
It is, yeah. Um, so I'm very frustrated by the framework of lessons learned as it's currently constituted.
in. Hmm.
I think it is very inadequate and is reflective of a less than robust understanding of knowledge and knowledge management. So that's part of it. You know,
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is right now the prescription is log your lessons learned on a lessons learned register throughout the life cycle of your project. And then at the end of your project, you hold a lessons learned meeting. You sort and prioritize and categorize all your lessons. You package them up and you put them in a lessons learned repository.
Yeah.
And PMI says, oh, by the way, you should have already been communicating lessons learned up and out of the project consistently. There's no framework, right? There's no assistance, there's no guidance. They just say, just do it. And what I found from a lot of project managers, especially people with a lot of experience, they've been in the field a long time, like a good chunk of them say, I don't really do that. The lessons don't get used. Now, if the
Yeah.
lessons aren't going to get used, right? If they can't get found, they're not going to be learned from. They're not
Yeah.
timely. They're not going to be acted on. You may as well not have them, right? Because otherwise, you're just wasting time and resources building this out. On the other hand, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I do them, but don't get us wrong. They're not lessons learned, they're lessons written down. And
That's an interesting distinction,
yeah,
because it's a tool that's you're writing it down, but you're not really internalizing that. You're not really using it to inform future decisions. That's
yeah,
where we're
you're
going here,
doing it because that's the letter of the law.
right?
And yeah, this stuff needs to happen. That's good. Like it's better to have lessons learned than not from a conceptual framework standpoint, right? But the way it's currently constituted, I mean, just imagine, okay, you've got a 5-year project. At the end, you package up all your lessons learned together. You put them in your lessons learned repository, whatever that may look like. Are the lessons from year one going to be that relevant? They're not as likely to be that relevant, right?
Yeah.
By year 5, they're just not. And what you have is there's this absence of the knowledge management disciplines, right? Because that actually will transcend the project's boundaries. It's not project management per se to say we have to contribute to the overall approach to knowledge sharing and knowledge management and knowledge culture and information management within our organization. But those things are absolutely critical for projects to fully leverage the knowledge that they have. And make no mistake, the knowledge that they create, because new knowledge is created with every project.
Right. I mean, it's what I guess in your opinion would be the ideal. I mean, you've obviously percolated in this quite a bit,
Mhm.
and I've seen it too. I've had the meetings.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, we did great here. We did great here. Yeah, kind of
yeah,
screwed this one up. Did made a mess here.
yeah,
But you're right. I mean, I really like your example of the 5-year project, because the stuff you maybe made a mess of that first year, you've already pivoted. It's already fixed. Or maybe part of the project culture and even the organizational culture, how you manage that.
right.
So you've just kind of naturally it's evolved to be a different situation.
Yeah,
But the year 5 lessons are still going to be valuable for an update in year 6 or something
yeah,
like that. So
yeah.
what's your ideal of like how to make this actually a valuable entity?
So the first thing is to acknowledge that Knowledge itself is not just a thing that lives in someone's head that you can rip out of their head and write down and then load into someone else's head. Right? That's not a thing that actually knowledge is subjective. It is constantly changing in our minds as we apprehend things. Knowledge also
Mhm.
exists in groups. Communal knowledge is a thing. And if for anyone who disagrees with me, just try starting a new job. Some well-meaning, enterprising, kind soul is going to come to you and say, "Let me take you under my wing. Let me show you how we do things here." How we do things here is communal knowledge. It's
Right.
shared, it's constantly growing, moving, right? You cannot manage knowledge the way that you manage people or resources or scope or schedule or cost, right? You
Mhm.
you have to manage knowledge the way you manage risk indirectly, right? Because you can't say risk don't happen. You're a negative risk. I think you shouldn't happen. No, what you have to do, you have to monitor and control the situation, have a strategy, and have a continuous focus throughout the project life cycle on facilitating learning, yes, for the team, but
Mhm.
also for the organization, right? And there are strategies you can put in place, right? Okay, lessons learned, write it all down. Well, that's great. That's great. But think about it with me for a moment. For the sake of understanding a message, what's the best kind of communication? What would you say?
For me, it's
Yeah, what's the
verbal
clearest?
conversational, right?
Yeah, because it's the moment something's written down is the moment it's subject to interpretation, right? The moment uh, writing down for the sake of understanding a message is inferior. It just is. You don't believe me? We have a court system for a reason. The moment that the law was laid down, everyone litigated it because there was no agreement on what it actually meant. And the
Right.
further you get away from that, right, the more distance there is from the person who wrote that down to the person who's reading it. There is more variety in what you can interpret. So I think that's the first place where you start, right? The second place is, how do you facilitate learning and communication in a way that's both sustainable and retainable? So are you doing specific exercises within your organization to communicate knowledge and then record and then retain that knowledge and pass it forward? Are you leveraging all the media possible beyond just having a lessons learned repository, right? Where it's in somewhere and then no one is retrieving it, no one's actually accessing it. So part of it's cultural, right? You have to be working to foster a culture and an environment in which knowledge sharing is valued and knowledge sharing is practiced. But second is, you got to start thinking outside of the box too. I know a group that they're archivists and they go around to like a consulting firm, right? And they go around to organizations. What they've started doing is doing oral history recordings style, like, with like This American Life type,
Right.
recordings with CEOs and senior management with these organizations to say, like, well, what was the vision for the company when it got started, and how did it get from where you started it to where it is here? And facilitating that transfer of knowledge, right? Are we actually sitting down with the people who are going to leave soon? Do we have good offboarding processes just as well as our onboarding processes? All this stuff are tools in the toolbox to create an environment which facilitates knowledge transfer. Are we rewarding our staff for successful knowledge transfer? Or are we incentivizing competition, which is going to be the death knell of knowledge transfer, because giving knowledge away in a competitive environment is giving your competitor an advantage over you? All these things are considerations, and they're all absent for the most part from PMI and the framework and the lessons learned model, right? The model is, whatever you learn, just write it down and put it in a database somewhere. Put it on SharePoint.
Right. Yeah, because the practical reality is that no one's going to look at it unless there is, like you're saying, some kind of facilitated discussion, some kind of organized learning based on this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not something I really thought of, which is it's really interesting to me because how many projects have you had
Mhm.
that went bad? You know, hand up. Like I've had several. Like it just happens. Didn't go exactly the way you planned.
Right.
So you can go back and you can analyze that and try and future proof for the next time. But if you don't, and if it doesn't become part of that culture, that just general cultural knowledge,
Yeah.
there's just no way you're going to keep repeating it. And also I have seen, everybody's had the odd toxic environment too, and I've seen like that hoarding of
Yeah.
knowledge,
Yeah.
which just kills everything. Any kind
Yeah.
of progress you want to have in terms of knowledge transfer and spreading this kind of information around, like they just don't want to do it,
Yeah.
which would really defeats the theme, the whole purpose being an organization in the first place.
Yes. And it's not just about, and the um like PMI's model for knowledge management, um it says individual knowledge management. Okay, great. Individual knowledge management so that the project work can be done. Okay, I guess. Yeah, that's good. Right. And then it says, that there's team project management, team knowledge management. Right. And it's like, well, this is for like, you know, for program management type things, the PMO type things. And it's like organizational project management, helping portfolios get there. I'm like, there has to be a more holistic approach to this. We have to acknowledge that we are within we're within a particular environmental context. The culture of the company is going to influence this in a big way. I tell people all the time, right? Culture eats process for breakfast every single day of the
100%.
week, always.
100%.
So, like, we now are in a situation where does the project manager have to be a trainer? No. But should the project manager consider putting resources toward a dedicated role of information and knowledge management and liaison outside of the project to key stakeholders to communicate lessons that have been encountered in a timely fashion that could have a really outsized influence on the competitiveness of the organization at large? We're inventing new knowledge. We're on the front lines. We're building something, and we're finding out things from our customers, from our clients, from our stakeholders all the time. And for a lot of project managers, they're like, "Hey, look, I'm in the business of giving you what's in the scope statement, right? I'm here to give
Yeah.
you the deliverable, and that's my job. And yeah, if I find something, I'll just send an email to my project sponsor, and it's their job from that point forward to make sure that the organization can capitalize on it." And in my opinion, that's just not good enough.
Yeah. Um, and a lot of interesting points. I think I'm curious your thoughts on something else, obviously related, but in like a more agile environment, everyone's always, ranting about agile methodologies,
Yeah,
but there's room there because the whole point of agile is to be constantly engaged with the client, with the team, and feedback and improvements and pivoting on priorities as they become necessary.
yeah,
Um, is this kind of information management side, how does it fit in maybe more of an agile framework? Because then you're constantly improving your process
yeah,
as part of being agile, to use the quotes again.
yeah.
You're always trying to improve the process as you're building the product. So how does this kind of filter into more of an agile method, say for a software company or something like
Right.
that?
Okay, so there's great things about agile. All right. And I can be a little bit because I'm a moderate, right? I'm not a zealot one way or the other.
And that's
I'm
good. That's a
Yeah,
good
I
thing.
think it's good, but you get into the framework wars online and people have some thoughts. And that's fine, whatever. You do
Yeah.
you. I am non-denominational, okay? But I don't consider agile a wonderful way of working. I consider agile to be an absolutely fantastic way of learning. It's Learning is iterative. Like we know this. We know this. Learning is iterative. You kind of you observe something, you try it out. That's how babies learn to walk. They try it, they fall. They get up, they fall. They get up, they fall. Pretty soon they're walking. Um, how do you learn language? Well, you can stick your nose in a book and learn all the grammar. You can learn all the vocabulary you like, but until you start using it and making mistakes and correcting those, you'll never be able to speak it. It's iterative. That's great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. The problem in Agile for me is that the process itself can be a barrier. The process is we're always doing retrospectives. That's great. Good, 100%. Retrospectives, though, are focused primarily on the team and their process to get the work done, yes, but also on how well they were reflective of the Agile methodology. How were they living the Agile mindset, and how were they doing the Agile ceremonies? And, I have seen teams where that's a barrier to communication up and out. I don't think it's any coincidence that there's always tension between senior management and Agile teams, where senior management says, tell me how much it's going to cost and tell me how long it's going to take, right?
Right.
And the team says, you're not Agile and you need to be Agile. You don't understand. You don't value us.
Then it's just these
There's
two
that
worldviews coming
combative,
together like this.
yes. And for me, I am a great believer in incremental progress when it comes to influencing an organization. I'm not a revolutionary. What I think is you should incorporate some kind of iterative cyclical framework for learning lessons learned. But you also have to use, dare I say, a slightly more predictive, authority-based understanding of orchestrating and coordinating the environment and the learning within your team and outside of your team. So that way there's some kind of dedicated something that's custom to your team and your organization's culture that's going to facilitate communication out, communication upstairs to the people who make the key decisions, because that is a critical component. I just don't know that gets done on a self-organizing team. I don't know that gets done. Could it be? Yes, if the team values it. But I think it's so important. I would wish there were a formalized something somewhere to facilitate that transfer of knowledge. That's probably controversial, and I've probably just alienated 90% of the people listening, both on the predictive side and on the Agile side.
If you're going to offend people, offend everybody. So it's okay. So, John, I think that's about time. So we're going to have to leave it there. But I really appreciate this. This has been a really enlightening conversation for me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me anytime.